Now, when I originally grabbed this, I was thinking, okay, it's going to be another remake of Double Dragon 2 for the NES, like the Double Dragon 1 one was. Oh, and speaking of Double Dragon 1, I do want to mention, before I actually move on to my next one, is that you can actually find Double Dragon 1 on the 3DS store under the Game Boy, where the Game Boy games is. It's actually there. I think about maybe $3 to $5. Not that expensive. I would give it a buy. It's still pretty fun, and also the 3DS has a means to be able to kind of save your current location and load at any time. So you should have no problems. You shouldn't have no problems actually beating the game because of that, unless you just aren't able to save proper places and stuff like that. But it's not. You shouldn't have that much problems with it at that point. Anyway, on to the next game, Double Dragon 2. All right, so so as I was trying to say, Double Dragon 2 is actually not a remake of the second game. I was expecting that after playing the first game on the 3DS. But it's not at all. It's actually a completely new game. Basically, the story about it is somebody sets you up and is trying to frame you or something like that. Someone's out to get you. And so because of this, you have to beat up people and get to the final level. Which happens to be like a giant office, a skyscraper type setting. And so, because of this is a completely new game. So, with completely new levels, completely new enemies. So, let's get onto the actual thing. As far as the, speaking of enemies, we have a few, like I said, there's completely new enemies. So, we have basic general thugs. They're a little bit tougher than the Williams because they actually can fight back a bit. And, there's also, biker thug type enemies. There are a bunch of enemies based off weapons you could actually get in Double Dragon, including the baseball bat, the knife, and a Morning Star, which acts like the whip. So, 3 new enemies based off that. There's all types of new bosses, which I'll get to in a little bit. As far as the being able to fight these guys, you do have some pretty nifty moves at your disposal, but not all that many moves. You don't actually have all the moves you have from Double Dragon 1, but it doesn't go to the Double Dragon 2 style either. It's still punch and kick, like you normally would. A punch, B kick. Hitting both buttons does not make you jump though. Hitting both buttons allow you to crouch, and hitting them again allows you to do this uppercut, which allows you to do tons of extra damage. And on top of that, you actually have a move from the third Double Dragon game, for the Genesis at least. I guess the arcade version, or I'm not entirely sure. Where you jump up and knee them on the ground, which does even more extra damage. In fact, a combo of the uppercut and the knee can usually kill most standard enemies, which is amazing. As far as the actual everything is concerned about that, because you have these moves at your disposal, you actually are able to take down the enemies and actually have a good feel on the controls. You don't feel like you're overwhelmed by the enemies, and that you just have to battle nutrition them. You have strategies at your disposal to be able to defeat the enemies. And it's not just you have to be lucky or it doesn't feel like you always have to be lucky or just hope that the enemy gets hit by your attack or something like that before you do. It actually feels like you have control in the fight. You're able to actually defeat the enemies really fast. So, relatively fluently. Let's just put it like that. Relatively fluently, and in most cases pretty easily. As far as other things, another feature that this game has that's really cool is the ability to actually unlike Double Dragon 1 and kind of like Double Dragon 2 for the NES and Double Dragon 3 for the Genesis, when you get knocked out, you actually just respawn where you are. You have 2 lives, and once you run out of the 2 lives, you game over, and you're given actual infinite continues, and you start at the beginning of the area. So it's pretty much like you just have 2 lives to get through a section, or 3 lives to get through a section. And because the infinite continues, you're actually able to, you know, if you're on a long trip, you're actually able to continue the game from where you left off without having to resort to starting completely over. The only thing is, I don't think it saves, so therefore if you're in a situation where you shut the game off, or the game or the game died, or battery died, or anything like that, I don't know if it actually saves. I just know that it doesn't. It allows you to continue from where you're at as long as you still have the game on. So there's that. Another thing is that because of the infinite continues, you dying is not all that big of a worry, because there are a lot of different sections, but I'll get more into that as I get to the negatives of the game. You'll see why. As of something that's kind of a moot point, I want to talk about the level design, because this game has some interesting locations. The game starts off in the street like normal. It's like a kind of a more downtownish, but kind of weird. It's like a kind of almost like a market type setting. I don't know how to really describe it. It's not the streets like the starting of the Double Dragon, but it is, but it isn't. It's different enough that it's kind of cool. Anyway, so you start off in this like downtown area. You beat up some thugs, and you get to the game's first boss relatively fast. And you know they're bosses because they actually have their own boss music. And the first boss is this guy who has the ability just to punch you out and stuff. He's like a boxer. Pretty easy once you get used to the uppercut. The uppercut command, he's pretty easy to take down. The next boss you have the fight, or the next area you have is this subway area. You go through the subway, beat up enemies, fight the new knife guy that shows up. Then you get on the train, beat up the flail guys, and then once you're off the train, you get to the other side, and you beat up this guy who holds a gun. Another new enemy. He's basically a knife guy, except he has a long-range weapon, pretty much, and he's kind of cheap. The gun did a lot of damage, but he's still a neat enemy, and it's kind of cool. It's kind of interesting to see enemies that actually have projectiles against you, so you have to put the pressure on them, and they're not completely weak if you get close to them either. They have kicks and stuff that they can use too. And so anyway, after you get past that, you go to this, like, I think it's like a fourth or it's like another city or something. It's different. It's kind of like the first stage again, but it's still different enough. And then once you get to the end of that, you actually fight a dude wearing this mask and this Jason mask, and wielding a chainsaw. And once you actually get to him, he's actually kind of really neat. I do like that particular boss fight because he's just really cool looking. And he's actually kind of challenging in his own way too. So once you beat him, you are able to move on, and you go down into a subway. Wait. And you go into a train. Then outside the train, you fight a ninja. Or at least the boss is different. But, why do we reuse 3 areas we just went through? Now, I wouldn't have too much of a problem with them reusing an area if this game was super long. After the subway, though, there's only 2 sections left. Another streets-like section, and then the tower. Or the skyscraper. Yeah, I want to ask this question. Why is there a subway section again? We didn't need that. We could have had any other level there. And it would have been fine. It would have actually been great. But using the subway again right after you just used it. That bugs me. But that's kind of my thing though with the level design in this game. A lot of the levels are really awesome, but a really awesome design, really awesome look, in areas that you really don't see in Double Dragon. At least none of the ones I've played, and I've played them all for this channel. So pretty neat little areas that, you know, pretty neat little stuff that you're able to go through that's different from most of the Double Dragon games. But then they reuse an area, and that bugs me. So much so that I'm pretty much calling the level design of this game a negate point. Level design is good, the enemy placement's good. No really variety like there is in the first game where you're able to switch from side scroller to not, because you don't have like a jump. So that'd just be completely useless. You just have the uppercut instead of the jump. But reusing levels bugs me, so it's a negate point. As far as anything else though, just getting actually to now the actual negatives of the game. The one big gripe I have, there's this game, other than the reusing of the levels and 2 other things, I really don't have too much actually problems with this game. So, the first con I can think of is the final level in the game is basically this, is a skyscraper-like building. You go, you beat up some enemies, and you ride an elevator, and you go up and you fight a bunch more enemies, and you ride the elevator, and then there's a boss gauntlet, then the final boss. The only thing about this is it's the longest stage in the game, by far. And mostly that's because all the other stages are pretty much just a long hallway and then done. Anytime the room transitions, you're on a new stage. It does a little chime, and stage clear. But the final level, anytime on other transitions are actual new areas. So the skyscraper level is just a bit long because it just, whenever there's actually a transition in the level, it doesn't do the little chime and gives you a thing. If you lose all your lives, you have to start at the beginning, the very bottom of the building. And so, and this level has at least 2 floors, the boss gauntlet, and the second floor is filled with the knife and gun guys who can tear your health apart. And the boss gauntlet, I did neglect to mention one boss, and this boss I don't like at all in this game. But I did have no problem with him when I fought him in the actual, when you fight him in the actual stage he's in, because you have 3 lives, so he knocks you down, he kills you, you still have 2 lives. But basically there's, the last boss is this big tubby guy, I think he has like a stick. This big tubby guy, if he has a chance to knock you down, he does your little jump off the thing and smashes you. And that can almost kill you there. in the boss gauntlet, you're probably almost dead from everything else. So when you get to him, oh gosh, it's horrible when you have to refight that guy, because it's just basically at that point it's just luck if you're gonna beat him in order to actually progress and fight the final boss. But after him, it's the final boss, and sadly, speaking of the final boss, he's not all that tough or strong. He does have a cool little cutscene and everything before the final boss, so that's kind of cool, but at the same token, it's... Oh yeah, there's also one little bit with that, again, to say that the level design and the actual aesthetics of the game is really cool. As you're fighting the final boss, the screen does scroll back as you keep inflicting damage on him. So that's really cool. I do like that. Again, because of the reused levels, I have to say level design is a negated point. Really awesome design. Even the skyscraper level is awesomely designed. It's just too damn long. It's too damn long and there's no preparation for it, I guess. Because there's really nothing wrong with the length of the level. There's no other levels anywhere close to that long, and challenging to actually even come close to preparing you for that level. Any other level, anything else in the game, you could just basically just breeze through. No problem. It's just that final bit. And also another thing is that this game has a easy, normal, and hard settings. For the footage, I just recorded the hard setting just in case there's a part where it's like, oh, you made it to the end, but you can't fight the final boss because blah blah blah. Which I don't know if that's a thing or not, but if it's anything like Double Dragon 2 for the NES, it actually would be a thing. But for the most part, that's one thing. And also, speaking of the Infinite Continues, it seems like the Continues only the areas in the game are very short, except for the last level, so the Infinite Continues almost feels like it's there just to kind of balance out some cheapness with the enemies and stuff. Still nothing really you can't get past without just a little bit of practice and stuff, but it is something that's just kind of there, and it just doesn't feel properly used. I mean, I'm glad it's there in a way, because it helps with being able to continue the game, but just feels like it was added because otherwise there'd be no way to come close to beating the game, because some of the enemies can just wail all of your health and stuff like that. There's no way to gain extra lives, nothing like that, so it just kind of feels like the Infinite Continues as kind of more of a failsafe than just other than just a proper feature. Like I said, the areas are way too short until the final area. But other than that, just looking at the game again, weighing the pros and the cons, I have to say this game gets 8 skulls out of 10 for beating boredom's ass. But now on to the final game of this trio.